Hey, what's going on guys? Shane here. Today we're going to look at 5 misconceptions with fighting, specifically boxing. There's a lot of common cues and instructions that we get as beginners, but I don't want you guys to get stuck in a box. So let's take a look at some ways that you can break the rules. The first common misconception is never cross your feet. We're taught this as beginners because we never want to do this. We're going to be off balance. If we get hit, if we get pushed, we're going to fall over, right? So instead, we're often taught the box drill, where if we want to step to our left, then we step with the left leg first and then the right, never crossing our feet. If we're stepping forward, the lead leg steps first, then the rear, stepping to the right, and then back, it's going to be rear and then front. But if you study high-level boxers with really good footwork, you're going to notice that they break that rule all the time, right? When they pump the jab, they're going to take this lead foot and they're going to step through. So left leg, step to the right, and I'm actually in a really good position here. I'm still balanced, I'm protected. They hit me with something, I can still cut this angle and follow up. So I use this one often and it works really well. Opposite, I can take my rear leg and I can step back. So I can use this for a check hook if I need to create an angle, or if I'm just backpedaling to try to create some distance. And another one that Triple G uses is the shift. So often if we're stepping forward, they say take a step with the lead leg first, but he throws the right hand and he steps forward with the right foot, switching his stance. So right there he's switching or crossing his feet. So that's one of the rules to understand, right? If you're a beginner, and a beginner could be the first 2 years of training, then don't cross your feet. Understand balance, understand the fundamentals before you start experimenting with crossing your feet. The next common misconception is that power equals knockouts, meaning the more power that I have in my shots, the more likely I am to knock someone out. And it is true that if I put a ton of velocity, a ton of torque into my shot, that it's going to do damage. The double end bag is the best way of demonstrating that. And it's easy to hit if the bag is still, but just like my opponent's head, it's not going to be. They're going to be moving. So when I try to do that again, it's very hard for me to hit. So the point here is tone it down a little bit. Worry less about power and focus more so on your accuracy and your technique. And I promise you're going to get more knockouts that way, because it's not the most powerful punch necessarily. It's the punch that they don't see coming. So instead, when you're working the double end bag, when you're sparring, when you're in competition, think about fighters like Lomachenko, think about MMA fighters like Nick and Nate Diaz. These guys never wind up for big shots. They only throw powerful shots when they know the punch is going to land. And for that reason, they have a great gas tank. Because if you're always throwing 100% power into your shots and you're missing on top of that, you are going to gas yourself out. So instead, like I said, I challenge you to really just focus on your precision, on your accuracy, and it could be a punch as simple as that knocks someone out. The next misconception is that we have to pivot on our feet when throwing punches, especially with the lead hook. Now, I read way too many comments on high-level fighters' Instagram pages where people will say, you get a lot more power in your lead hook if you pivoted on that front foot. And that's not necessarily true. Plus, these fighters already know body mechanics. They know how to throw the lead hook. So you may want to refrain from saying that if you're one of those guys that comments. So let's talk about why we're actually taught that as beginners. It's a great cue to remind us to pivot the hips, to put the weight onto the rear foot, and to rotate to make sure that we're not putting too much stress on that lead knee. It's very important that our toes and our knees are always facing in the same direction. So that's why we're taught to do this when we throw our lead hook, to rotate on the lead foot, turn the knee over, turn the hip. Like I said, it's a good beginner cue. However, it's not required, because when I throw this lead hook, I can still pull the weight onto my rear foot, I can still rotate the hips, and I can get just as much power, if not more, without ever rotating that foot like that. And again, Triple G is one to watch, because when he hits the bags, when he hits pads, when he throws it in the ring, there's no rotation in that lead foot. The fourth is don't chicken wing your arm when throwing punches. Let's talk about the jab. So a lot of people will say don't chicken wing your arm, meaning lift your elbow out and then extend, right? There's no power on it when you do this, and it makes it a two-step process. I lift it up and then I punch, whereas if I keep the elbow tucked in and just punch A to B, it's going to be a little bit quicker, it's going to get to the target faster. But again, since we're already studying Lomachenko, one thing I want you to notice is when he cuts to the outside, he likes to trap his opponent's hand and pull down on the glove to create an opening. What he does from there is he lifts his elbow up, chicken wings it, to get that outside angle, and then he also likes to punch down a little bit to get more power on the jab. So there's definitely that chicken winging motion. Now again, I'm not saying that you're going to do this with every single punch. You still should be keeping it in tight, but you can experiment when you want to do it in certain situations safely and effectively. Okay, the fifth misconception is that we have to extend our legs when we throw our punches. And I think this comes from the idea that power generates from our legs, from the floor. And that's true, but let's turn to the side here, because we're going to be throwing a rear uppercut, so let's demonstrate here. a lot of the times, like I said, people will throw the rear uppercut and they say that you need to use the power in your legs. So extend up as you throw it, but then you get stiff-legged, you get tall. You don't want to get tall in boxing. You want to sit down and do your shots. So like I said, it does generate from the floor, from our feet, from our legs. And in theory, right, like we're squatting or like we're deadlifting, these are our biggest muscles. It should give us more power, but power generates in the hips. So the reason why we push off of the ground with our feet is so we can get the hip rotation. And the hip rotation is how we get the power in the uppercut. So don't extend up and get tall when you throw your uppercut. Instead, sit down in the punch. Keep that rear knee bent and get a lot of rotation with your hips. It should be more like that. That's going to get you a lot more power than doing this. All right, guys, thanks for watching. So again, none of these are incorrect. You should be following them, but also you should know when to spread your wings and fly. You should know when to break the rules a little bit. So experiment and just make sure that you're following the correct fundamentals. Until next time, be sure to subscribe to get the fight tips before your opponent does. I'm Shane with Fight Tips for the underdogs.